Imagine you're standing at a crossroad in your life. Just by making one single decision, you could literally have everything that you've always wanted: power, wealth, love, knowledge. But imagine by getting all of these things, you start to realize that the one thing that you actually really wanted is something that you can't have. Welcome to the world of Faust. The legend goes Faust happens to be a scholar, and he makes a deal with the devil, Mephistopheles. Basically, he agrees to get everything that he wants in exchange for his soul. Now, I think in today's society specifically, we're hungry for things, specifically information, data, advents in AI, technology, similar to this like age-old quest of Faust. But that is a quest for more. And that is our subject for today. More, but more specifically, greed. Hi, everybody. My name is Alia Kizelbash. Welcome to Alia & Co. I am the host. We do a podcast here that talks about complex things and we break them down and we make them simple. Today, we have a guest here that is no stranger to data and how it's consumed. Kumar, very nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Please elaborate on, this introduction of yours. I'd like to know who you are and all of these awesome things that you do.
Sure, absolutely. Currently, I'm the managing director of a professional services firm called Trillicent, and also the chief innovation officer for Helios, which is a disaster recovery automation tool. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a SaaS product.
Okay.
Yep.
So now when I think of disaster recovery, I think of Louisiana and I think of disaster recovery. I've lost something, specifically like a tangible item, like my house, maybe a flood, something like that. But this is a little bit different. How can you, please explain?
Absolutely. So in our world, disaster recovery, I mean, definitely with what you're explaining is also considered disasters, right? However, we're talking about data loss, right? And preventing that data loss, protecting that data. And then if you do lose, how do you recover from that disaster? And how do you get your business back up and running, right? So that's the framework that we're working in.
Right. And business up and running is definitely, your use case, but essentially those businesses are serving people. So, just the importance of how information is, at the forefront of our thought process on a day-to-day basis. Do you think that society is addicted to information?
Absolutely. If you look at the way we've been consuming technology over the years, right? Going to internet cafes or having a PC in your home, when the internet first came out, right? And people were going to Yahoo and different search engines and eventually Google and getting information for things like, where to visit if they're planning a trip somewhere like in Portugal, right? And back then you would have a list of websites that would tell you where to stay, what neighborhoods to stay. You might come across a blog poster who posted the top 25 places to visit. And then from there, we got into the smartphone technology, right? Where now we're able to walk around with that information at our fingertips. And we have that data in front of us. It's not where it's where you have to go to somewhere to sit down and review it, right? You could be commuting on the train and capture that information. Yeah. Now, we're entering into this whole AI world, right? Where deep search is now telling us what we should do, where we should go, how, what that itinerary is going to look like. And we don't even have to think about it, right? Yeah. We just say, hey, I'm going to Portugal. What are some good places to visit in Lisbon? It'll give you a whole itinerary, even give you day trips outside of town.
But not even that. It's going to do it the way that you like it because
because of all the information that it's already consumed about you.
No, absolutely. I mean, but that's the thing is though, through the ages, if you think about and I don't know when you grew up, but I
Mhm.
mean,
I'm old.
I'm equally old. But there was a time where I remember, and it was definitely before the internet.
Mhm.
I remember in high school, it was 1999 when
Mhm.
I was a senior, and that was the year that they launched this class called Introduction to the Internet,
Mhm.
right? And there was no curriculum. Basically, you just went on there and you were scrolling around on the internet. And I
Mhm.
remember I accidentally printed out like all of the lyrics to the Fugees, and I got
Mhm.
in so much trouble because of that. But I just remember that it was very
Mhm.
new. Before that, though, you would go to the library if you had a question. You
Mhm.
can ask people, you ask your parents, you ask somebody, there's a limitation. Encyclopedia Britannica,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
you look it up, it's not quite there. You go to the library, pull out some books, maybe you'll find an answer. But it is that search, right? Then you have the internet with Google, and being able to put in items, like things that you're looking for has made it easy. It's at your fingertips. But it's not the nuanced way that these AI agents are working, like ChatGPT,
Mhm.
where now you can ask a very specific question and you will get exactly that specific answer.
Right.
So, like, what are your thoughts on that evolution? And, and how do you think that impacts our society?
Yeah. A great question. And first of all, I didn't even have the internet when I was in high school, by the way.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
yes, 100%. I mean, the way we're moving, right, as a society with all the new technologies that are coming into the forefront, there's a lot more that's going to be happening in the next, 3 to 5 years, right? But, to answer your question about, how all of the agentic AI, how that's all going to come into play. I mean, think about how like my father-in-law,
Mm.
right? I love him to pieces, but he bugs me all the time about little questions about his iPhone, his computer, having tech issues and
Yep.
things like that,
Mhm.
right? Now, consider the way we're moving, we could even have an agent running on our phones making updates, making changes for you
Mhm.
on the fly,
Right.
right? And we're, Apple is slowly going to be rolling out something pretty soon,
Mhm.
right? And where they are, I mean, it's already AI enabled, our
Right.
phones,
Yeah.
right? And so you could even tell it to brighten your screen, enlarge the font, right? And now those agents are already going to be learning about um, what you're searching, so now this is another layer of data
Mhm.
being captured,
Right.
right? So to start making things a lot more easier and user friendly,
Mhm.
right? Where you don't even have to um, really have any effort in making that, update or change.
Right.
You're just telling it what to do,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that is it's wonderful, and I know how frustrating it is. I think that specifically generationally, right? Everyone uses AI very different. I mean, I think that I was watching something where the younger kids are using it in a specific way. Where imagine like your parents might be using it
Hmm.
in a certain way because they don't understand the scope and also how to use it. And so or may understand more of the scope.
Right.
Adversely, like I mean, thinking with the kids in the younger generation. I mean, there is so much that is there. I feel as though, you know, there's one thing with all of this information that we're putting in to these closed sort of data systems, right? In,
Hmm.
in a sense, and just to break it down, is basically companies have access to all of that information that you're putting in there, versus open data where maybe there are certain companies that show you exactly how they're
Hmm.
using that information. Do you think that maybe that could be a problem down the line, not knowing?
Right. And so what's going to happen is, in order for us to live with AI,
Hmm.
right, there's going to have to be regulation, right? And, the right now, going into studying AI at the university level,
Hmm.
right? It's the pathway is usually going into software engineering, computer science, machine learning, data science, maybe, and also data science, not maybe, but there's very limited coursework and programs around the regulatory aspects of AI,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say of all the universities that I've seen, my son is a just finished his freshman year at IU,
Mm-hmm.
but the Luddy School of Engineering at IU
Mm-hmm.
is the only one that has any kind of AI regulatory program,
Yeah.
right? And that's where I think, we're going to start seeing that shift, right? So, a lot of talk has been out there about, what's the future of work going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
right? With all the automation, with all of these, white collar type jobs that are going to be slowly going away, which, that's basically what's happening, right? It's not the blue collar workers that are getting really affected.
Right.
It's consulting firms are laying off left and right, because of taking the more AI approach on doing things, which is definitely going to help, in the long term. But what's going to need to happen is they're going to have people capable of understanding the regulatory requirements, where the safeguards are, where the compliance needs to be, all surrounding AI, because and ethical, absolutely, absolutely. And, because AI is now going to be encompassed in every single business. I mean, it used to be, even a flower shop needed didn't have a website. Now everybody has a website, right? This is the next stage of that, right?
And they make
Evolution.
it easier also. I mean, I remember initially back when first started having a web page was like, oh my gosh. But now there's all these different avenues of going on social media and having a page to have more access to people, So I feel like over the scope of just the evolution of how it is unfolding, it's really interesting. But now specifically when it comes to like regulatory standards, I had a friend that started a business where basically like a long time ago, he built a model where sold it to police, where it would predict, and this was many years ago, predict movements of people that were potentially, there's certain movements that they would have before they were about to commit a crime, right? Now that was really back when a long time ago when there was. Now you can't do that, right? Because it's basically you're profiling, right? But since then, there has been a lot of change when it comes to regulations, when it comes to the use of predictions or predictive sort of like outcomes that may affect a human being. So when this new technology comes in, you're seeing that there's this little space for a bit where it's like unleashed and you can do literally anything, Do you think that we're there right now?
We're already there.
Yeah.
We're already there. I mean, there's that, when you mentioned your friend, I read something very recently about how the court system is using, this product called Compass, and it's correctional something, so basically it's giving, it's using predictive analytics, right? To I don't want to say profile a defendant, but give you some sort of metrics around a defendant, if what the likelihood of them to commit a crime is, right? Like, if they were to be dismissed of charges, right? What is that likelihood going to look like, right? So there was an independent study done, right? And they, clearly indicated showing that, African American defendants, right, were being biased towards, having the analytics come back and telling them that they are highly likely of committing a crime versus, white defendants, right? So it's things like that. We're already there. And that's where I'm saying that if we don't have the regulation in place, right, and the ethical standards in place, we're
I mean, it's a free for all,
right?
It's like might as well, as soon as a baby's born, just put them in jail, right? Like
right, exactly, right.
It's kind of a very strange place to be,
Yeah.
That's where like the idea of consciousness comes in, and consciousness as not a computer, I mean, that's where humans are different. But that's an interesting point, and definitely there's a lot more as it's evolving. It's really great at least to see a program when it comes to regulatory standards and AI together. But the law and AI definitely has a ways to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with protecting people's data, because everyone is signing up for these services, not reading any terms of service, privacy policy, nothing, and just blindly just signing up because and what are they agreeing to? They don't even know.
Right.
So it's kind of a hard process, but hopefully, I mean, do you feel like there's some like something at the end of the tunnel? What phrase am I saying wrong? A light at the end of the
A
tunnel.
light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the way to go about this is definitely, it can't be a, hands-off approach, right, to this, right? Where we have AI just go and take care of every aspect of our lives, right? Whether it's on the personal side or whether it's in commerce, right? AI needs to be used as a enhancement to our lives, not a substitute for intelligence, right? And that's where the way we're moving in terms of building products and stuff, right? We want to stay within that framework of working alongside us as a partner, right? Like for even with our development team, for Helios, we've got much bigger modules that we're going to be producing. And, I got some, feedback from my team saying, we're going to need to hire some more people. I said, okay, we can definitely do that. However, have we looked at using agents, agentic AI, alongside, a developer to go and start, pushing off some of the, I would say, the grunt work, right? Cleaning up the code and making sure everything is fine, right? Versus on the design side, right? So it's things like that where you want to partner up, and maybe it's 3 or 4 agents to 1 human,
right?
That maybe that ratio is not going to be always 1 to 1,
right? Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, leadership level folks, at the C-suite, they're going to want to see, 1 human to many agents, right?
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. We were actually just having this conversation before you came, and it's like thinking about development in itself. It's who wants to go after it and choose to get it, right? If you go to a developer, they might charge a person XYZ, right? But if that person is resourceful, they can go to an agent and, build something on their own if they feel compelled to do it, right? If you can do it and you have the drive and the want to, like the desire to do it, then you'll do it. Versus like then there's this gap, right? Because you're saying like these white collar jobs are going to go away, whereas these blue collar jobs they'll stay, that gap becomes, I mean, it's very true, right? This exactly that is that a lot of these jobs then start to disappear because of AI. So should we hate it?
Yeah, I mean, it's all perception, right? And how you're going to embrace it, how you're going to use it is up to the individual, right? And if I were, a white collar worker or even a blue collar worker, right? Because eventually that's what's going to happen too. I mean, it's happened for many years already. I mean, the factories, the automotive industry, right? With the use cases around robots, right? And yeah, I mean, those individuals that are, directly impacted are going to end up hating it. Now, if we, have this, let AI just, have a free for all, right? And now we're getting affected by getting, cyber attacks, getting, because that's what these cyber criminals are using is AI, right? They're, it's not, a guy in the Philippines or in India or wherever, calling up and saying, hey, my name is Joe. I'm an IRS agent, with his accent. No, they're using AI to sound like Bob from Texas, and and
Yeah.
basically coming in there and trying to enforce,
Yeah.
their get them to pay whatever, right?
Right.
So with that being said, yeah, it's, we need to protect ourselves,
Right.
right? And we need to start looking at ways to regulate this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gets into us as humans.
Mhm.
So then are we greedy for information then?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It goes back to that whole concept around, getting the information, right at your fingertips, right? And being able to consume that information, directly,
Mhm.
right? Without going to a library or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, how I guess the bigger question is, and I asked my kids this, the other day over dinner, is how do we prevent ourselves from becoming greedy,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And do we take breaks from all, digital breaks, take a break from
Yeah.
detox completely,
Mhm.
right? And that's very much a thing, right? And
Mhm.
people are, even schools are starting to embrace that and have days where there's, no technology
Good.
days, right?
That hasn't
Yeah.
happened in my kids' schools, but I'm happy to hear that
Yeah.
though, because before they would say it's like limit 2 hours of screens a day, right?
Mhm.
And then slowly that 2 hours became a whole day of being on your iPad at school because
Right.
if you forgot your iPad, you might as well just not even
Right.
come
Right.
because like what's the point? And then they shifted it. It's like no, 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 no. It's intense focus with your eyes. It could be a book. It could be anything.
Right.
So screens are not bad for
Yeah.
you. So I
Yeah.
wonder who paid for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, yeah, there's been a huge range when it comes to that and our usage. So as we become data hungry, like, do you think what is more greedy, us, as in terms of our hunger for data, or just like kind of like financial bro greediness, like
Mm,
between the two, what's worse?
yeah, and that's a great question. I think we definitely have that hunger for information, needing that, because at the end of the day, information is power,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what you do with that power can yield to, financial greed and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we definitely have that instinct of wanting to get that information. I mean, but that's part of the messiness of our human condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we the only way we can go around that, right, is to figure out how do we want to live, with this, with this technology. How do we want to live with the, because it's only going to get, you know, more in our face, if you will, right? I mean, you look at OpenAI's partnership with Johnny Ives, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Johnny Ives. He's the brains behind the iPhone and iPod, and he was the guy that was that designed. He's a product designer,
Mm-hmm.
by trade, and he was, I believe, the chief product officer at Apple, right, for that iPhone division.
Mm-hmm.
And so that being said, OpenAI is now going to start building out devices that, like wearable devices that we walk around with, and it's going to go and start, it's like a little camera on your shoulder or on your chain, wearing it as a chain,
Yeah.
wearable,
Right.
and so it will know what your daily routine is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like Life 360, I suppose, but your daily routine is when does she get up and have her coffee? What
Yeah.
else, I mean,
Right.
it just keeps getting more and more invasive.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, for a person that just remember hearing this before I was even, I just didn't even I didn't internalize like how things were done
Mhm.
in terms of like, your devices listen. And
Mhm.
so, they sell that information to like whatever, whoever
Mhm.
that wants to buy it, et cetera. I mean, in terms of like certain companies that are ethical, versus non, I mean, going back to the devil and
Mhm.
Faust, you know, do you
Mhm.
feel as though maybe there's a devil component to what's happening? Like, who's more greedy? Is it the companies or is it the users?
That's a great question. I mean, if I were to take stab at that, right? I would definitely say it's the companies, right?
Mhm.
Is the corporations that are kind of leading us down this path,
Mhm.
right? With these partnerships, with and building out these types of products and things like that, that are. I mean, building products is one thing, but you know, violating people's privacy,
Mhm.
that's a whole other aspect to this, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we need that regulation, where we need that ethical standards in place,
Mhm.
right? And if we're going to go down this path, right, because it's not going away, we're here,
No, yeah. And
so
I don't want it to go away.
yeah, we don't want it to go away, right?
Right?
Yeah. And so that's where we're going to have to start, looking at, putting, companies accountable, corporations accountable, talking to our politicians, making sure that they have the right legislation in place to start, start formally regulating that. And I think, that's already in the process, right? It's just not happening as quick as we'd like
Right.
it to
And it
happen.
takes time.
It's because that process is the long pole,
Mhm.
right, in this whole
Mhm.
chain, right? So where we need to get, where we need to speed up, right, is in that area versus on the tech side,
Mhm.
things are happening at breakneck
Yeah.
speed, right?
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, so much so. I want to shift gears into cybersecurity.
sure.
I mean, we are talking about data and, the different kinds of places we are in terms of regulation,
Mhm.
safety. I'd love for you to elaborate on how maybe there might be certain myths involved with maybe what the general public thinks about cybersecurity,
Mhm.
what maybe in actuality is, in terms of kind of your thoughts on that.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, when we think of cybersecurity, right? I mean, the general public, uh, I, I feel like today they have a much better understanding of this, right?
Mm.
There's been a lot of news stories of data leaks, right? For whether it's department stores or banks, right? And it's directly the consumer information that's been captured,
Mhm.
right? And so that being said, we have a fair good understanding of what's going on in terms of where some of these vulnerabilities are, right? However, no one really has like the behind the scenes aspect of this, right?
Mhm.
So for some of the more recent cyber attacks that have happened have always led to some kind of user error,
Mm.
right? If we look at, technology as a whole,
Mhm.
right? It's the people, the process, and then the technology,
Mhm.
right? And so, you know, whether it's inside of an organization where somebody didn't have a secure enough password, or they left some information on their phones, and like where they had like a little like a notepad with a list of
All the
all of their
websites.
websites that corporate websites that they
Mhm.
go to, and all
Mhm.
the passwords and IP addresses. There's been times where engineers from companies have gone out for happy hour for drinks,
Mhm.
and hackers are hanging out, and they've got listening devices under tables. They've
Mhm.
got, they've
Or
got,
use the public
they
Wi-Fi.
use them, or they don't even need to. They
Yeah.
create their
Oh,
own,
yeah.
and they
Oh,
basically,
yeah. That's right.
like tether into, right. You
Yeah.
had a guest that
Yeah.
talked about that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they tether into people's phones
Mhm.
and capture information. And then
Mhm.
once they're in, they lock everything up, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, so that's a common occurrence,
Mhm.
right? And what we're doing is helping companies find those vulnerabilities
Mhm.
and close up those security holes,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are large holes. I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Some
But
really,
they don't even have to be large. They
yeah,
could just be a pinpoint. I
yeah.
mean, Target got hacked. When Target got hacked, let's see, it was like maybe 2016, 2017. It was massive.
Yeah.
And the the hackers came through the HVAC system in one of the stores,
Okay.
and they,
Wow.
because it was
They
unprotected.
didn't use AI for that.
They didn't use AI for that. Right, right.
That's interesting. Wow. But okay, so like let's just pause there because I think that for those individuals who are not like first of all, don't put all of your bank information and passwords in your notes app,
Hmm.
right? Like, maybe it's just some kind of like housekeeping rules for
Hmm.
like say maybe my grandma that might be out there watching,
Yeah.
like don't do that, or like, you know what I mean? Like what are some things that people you see are doing? I
Hmm.
mean, like we have family members that just don't,
Yeah.
and so
Right. I mean, don't use password, like passwords like password 1234,
yeah.
right? And with a at symbol in the end or something just to be
Yeah.
creative, right?
Right.
It's still not going to work.
Hmm.
There's tools out there,
Hmm.
that you can download. There's some like BitLocker is one of them.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So is that a tool to record your passwords or generate passwords?
It'll do both.
Okay.
It'll
All
do
right.
both.
Okay.
Yeah. I know Apple and Android, they've got their own native,
Yeah. Key something. Yeah.
key check or something like that. Right. So, those are also those are good as well.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And if you can try to do something more creative with your password, or if you can't just use that auto-generated one,
Yeah,
right?
but I'm afraid to
I know,
because
I know.
like I will never remember that.
I never remember, but I save it there, and yeah, and then you just change it, or if you can come up with some creative ones,
Mhm.
right? Try to think of, places you visited, places, dog's name
Mhm.
or something, and then just jumble it all up together, right?
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, but that's the thing is though, I think that people don't think that that is that important, to have like a password that is that is unhackable to some
Mhm.
degree.
Right. Right.
But even the way that these hackers go into these sites was the metadata or something
Mhm.
like that. It's like, it's just
Right.
it's available, right?
Yeah.
And so okay, so that's definitely good. Passwords need to be strong.
Mhm.
Anything else that people need to know that don't do that?
Yeah, just be careful with what you click on, right? In emails. It
Okay.
might look like Citibank, it might look like Chase, but read where it's coming from, right? You could see from the sent,
Hmm.
or from the person who sent it to you, right?
Hmm.
If it looks funky, right? Call your bank
Okay.
and find out, hey, did you guys send this email here? Because chances are, if you got that email, they already know about it, right?
Hmm.
Because they sent it out in a like a mass email that was sent out, because they already know who's banking where,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what about these like unpaid toll, like text messages?
yeah. I got that. I got that too, and and in fact, I did have a transponder that actually expired,
Oh, okay.
and but the tolls have my license
Mhm.
plate,
Mhm.
right? So they just deducted out of my account anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't need the transponder.
Right.
But then I'm getting these messages like, "Hey, what's good?" And it's like, call this, foreign number
Yeah.
to take care of this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And actually, just to, I also recently purchased a transponder, and that's when I started getting the, or
Mhm.
some
Yeah.
event happened to, so, but and so there's that. But then you get all these ads for companies that are, hey, your information has been leaked.
Hmm.
Use our service and we'll help you. Is that something that even works?
Um, there are some good ones out there.
Mhm.
There was this one product called Viking
Okay.
Soft or something. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've actually used them. They're not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
But should we care? I mean, if it's banking information, yes.
Yeah, but again, it's already out there.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's all of our information's out there in
Yeah.
the dark web.
Right. Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you want it, you can have it.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, my daughter got a letter from NYU that said that all of her information was,
Hmm.
from the
Yeah.
university, and it's like,
Right.
oh, darn it,
Yeah. Yeah.
But what do you do about that then?
Right.
They're like, oh, we'll pay for, this service to have you monitored for X amount of years or whatever. But I mean, maybe there's sometimes people are also just like taking a leap of faith when it comes to how much of their stuff is out. I mean, if it's your livelihood and you're banking, if that's different,
Hmm.
then you should take some action. But
Yeah.
how much of it can we just like kind of look the other way, do you think?
Yeah. The good thing about the banks is that they're held liable, right?
Uh-huh.
So if you if a hacker comes into your hacks the banking system
Mhm.
and withdraws money out of your account and many other folks' accounts, right? The banks are liable for that,
Mhm.
right? But I feel like the at some point the other shoe is going to drop,
Mm.
and the banks are going to say, okay, enough's enough. We're getting slammed with these because they get slammed with fines
Mhm.
by the regulators, as well as their insurance premiums go up,
Right.
right? So it's a domino effect,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like at some point they're going to tell the consumer, which they already do. They tell you change your passwords, change it often, right?
Mhm.
If you want, shut down your account, move your money
Mhm.
physically out of one account and put it into another account,
That's
and create an exactly because now or maybe we just get AI agents to do that for us.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I mean, yeah, someone needs to build that. But yeah, so you hear all this negative stuff with these
Mhm.
AI agents, the hacking on the negative side. But are there good things that it's doing? I mean, helping, is there a specific example of like maybe a crisis that
Oh yeah,
came in
yeah.
where, AI totally helped? If we didn't have it, we'd be really screwed.
Yeah, a lot of the predictive side,
Mhm.
the predictive analytics, right? I mean, the weather patterns, that
Mhm.
were, how, like if you recall, obviously in LA, the fires, right? They were using predictive analytics and seeing how that fire was going to be spreading,
Right.
getting people out. I mean, they have those first responders have to respond right
Yeah.
away,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so time is of the essence, right? So getting that information, even in like small island countries, when there's typhoons and things like that happening,
Yeah.
they're able to start making those getting those safeguards in place,
Mm.
right, and getting people evacuated and things like that,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. And even in wartime
Mhm.
situations where, you need to alert the public. I had a friend that, worked in, some company that actually did that, where there's so many great cases, natural disasters for sure, and things that we can't really control. But yeah, we are safe because of those things, and it's definitely helpful towards our process. Do you see things now as someone who has had so much experience, like over 25 years of experience
Mhm.
in dealing with data? Is there something that you see behind the scenes that maybe the average individual that is not so like technologically advanced might be really surprised about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening in terms of for example, like so. Um, Everyone asks about the cloud,
Mhm.
right? And for the layman, right? For example, you have your photos stored on your phone, and then you get a cloud service and you put it into the cloud, but then that uses up space, and then you got
Buy
to
more.
buy more and stuff. And like a lot of times I'll get asked, like, well, I have it in the cloud, right? But yeah, but it's limited storage,
Mhm.
and there are people out there that really think that when they put their information in the cloud, it's literally up in a cloud. Like, like there's clouds always floating around, because I mean, that's, and I poke fun at that a little bit because, um, we're at this point where we've got all this nomenclature and all these vernaculars that are getting thrown around like cloud, AI,
Mhm.
and cybersecurity. I
Mhm.
mean, and people are just not, they just don't have a good grasp of what all of this is, right? And, a cloud is basically a data center, right? It's not a whole lot different than what like a big old computer room looked like with mainframes and stuff, I mean, now it's a lot more sophisticated and things like that, right? But there are, big, boxes that contain information, that contain data that can go bad. And you need, maintenance, you need support, you need all of that, and just like how, car engines need to have oil changes and things like that, right? Same thing with, good data hygiene, right? We have to start looking at, what are stale data segments, right? And clean out all of that, right? And whether it's in our phones.
Stale data.
So, like, for example, like just in a high level, for a use case around just everyday people, right? Would be looking at your phone, right? And seeing all the pictures that you have. And there might be multiple copies of the same one that, you want to get rid of, right? And you just haven't gotten around to it, and cleaning up that information, cleaning up that data. There might be some old documents that you have, old notepads that you have with passwords, with, all of that. You want to get rid of all of that stuff, right? And just, clean up some of that storage space, right? And keep it, whether it's important or not, right? I mean, you're going to have to make that decision, but, we want to start sweeping a house, right? Cleaning house.
Well, like, so you're saying that people who have like maybe 9,000 notifications on their phone in their email are bad for the environment?
Yes. Well, not so much for the environment, but definitely, yeah. I mean, you're definitely going to be, hit up by Apple or Google to buy more storage space.
Yeah.
Like my wife.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think it's like a data hoarder. Like I'm not guilty of that. But that's true. So that's something that we need to do. Like we need to be, it's important to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should not have to have information that you really don't need out there because someone's going to grab it.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, so like I'm just drawing a parallel to like, say, my children's artwork from kindergarten that I, don't feel like it hurts to throw it away,
Right.
type of situation, but also it's time consuming because especially in this society of us, immediate gratification, we need more data. Specifically in some ways, the way that these big companies have done like all of these psychological studies where what creates that dopamine hit, and how can we keep them coming back? Like initially, I know like with the whole idea of email, and the refresh button when it first came out, where it's like, okay, these are the only emails, but then you refresh and then some more stuff might come up or whatever, or even like with Facebook and, because people want to go back and see that little dopamine hit, but your body recognizes it. Do you find that might be there? Like, is this something that how can someone get out of that cycle?
Yeah. I think we're, when you mentioned the kindergarten pictures, right? The artwork, I should say, right? I mean, that definitely, is a great parallel, if we need to go down that path of, cleaning and, cleaning up storage and things like that, we're going to have to start, looking at where we need to make that, make those changes, right? I mean, whether, it's your email inboxes, I'm a, culprit as well, right? I store emails that I have from, 10, 15 years ago because, I'm going to start, referencing things, right? I'm going to go back in time and, look at that, right? But I also keep it in a stored, in a secure location, right? In fact, I mean, we've, with the Helios product, we have actually developed a module called Document Vault, right? And Document Vault is a secure environment, right, where companies can store their disaster recovery documentation, right?
Yeah.
And so we had one customer, who told us, and this is a pretty big player, in the retail world, and they said, well, we don't really want to have any of our documentation. Well, we ask, hey, we want to see your documentation, right? We want to see what you guys are doing currently, right? And they couldn't really produce a whole lot up front, right? And we came back and said, if that document doesn't exist, right, or if that document isn't available, then that process doesn't exist, right? So we need to, if that process doesn't exist, then we need to work around that and create those parameters for you in terms of your data recovery, right? So that being said, he pushed back and said, well, if I have all my documentation available, how do I know that the hackers are not going to get to it? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a catch-22.
Right. Yeah.
So, you follow a good process and have documentation, right? And you create that, you create that paper trail of information. If Bob retires, well, Sally is right there behind him to take that baton and keep going, right?
Yeah.
But he brought up a very valid point.
Right.
And that's why we created Document Vault.
Right.
And we're actually it's not just an encrypted environment. We're using blockchain technology to basically put a thumbprint on the document and creating a very higher level form of encryption for that document. And whoever checks out that document, their thumbprint will be on there.
Yeah. So that's good though. And I think that with blockchain in itself is a measure in terms of safety and keeping us safe. This is all like extremely eye-opening, hearing it from your perspective. Data is a vice, but then also amazing. There's so
absolutely.
Much. And especially now, the fact that we have so much access, at least, I was reading that people now, the amount of information that we have in one day is more than somebody in the 1700s had in their entire life, which is, it's overwhelming, and the way that we've kind of evolved as human beings. Just to get playful, I would say, you've seen Black Mirror, so, and especially kind of from your vantage point, are there any Black Mirror type scenarios that you might kind of see coming, or maybe, that whole utopian versus dystopian society? Like, where are we headed with that? Are we ending up like Wall-E?
You took the words out of my mouth, because last week I was whiteboarding with my business partner, and we were working on the next set of modules, and then I started just riffing on, what would be interesting, data centers being all lights out, and where you just have these facilities where it's only manned by robots, right? And let's say a server goes down, it knows exactly which location in the data center, which aisle, which row, which which is like the height of a cabinet, right? Where something is located, and a Wall-E type robot comes up, pulls up right in front. He raises up and then pulls out, so a couple of screwdrivers, pops out the server, pops in the new one.
Oh
and he's got a little backpack in the back. But that's where we. And then going back to dystopia versus utopia, right? That was a conversation I had with my kids too. On Father's Day, over dinner, and we were, like every one of these examples that they formulated of us falling into this dystopian-like environment, right? Where, we could be on a spaceship, and little chairs, zipping around, right?
I could get real comfortable doing that. Great, bring the slushy.
Right.
No, but and I think that people think, to some degree, a doomsday type situation. The AI is going to take over the robots, and everybody's going to, we're going to be living in caves barefoot, wearing dirty clothes, in the dark, whatever, but is it true that the actuality of it is that we might just end up in asking for slushies and not moving around, or like,
Yeah, that's very much the likelihood, right?
yeah,
I mean, and then that opens up a whole other,
yeah,
topic around, health and wellness and,
yeah,
and just, mental hygiene,
yeah,
more than
yeah.
anything, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Mindset, which
Yeah.
I mean, I feel as though is more and more important in terms of protecting yourself, especially in this environment that we're
Hmm.
in. But I want to, I mean, all of this has been so interesting, highly informative, because I think it's really important again to bridge the gap, because I think the people that know, right?
Hmm.
And definitely there's some people that are going out there and really like evangelists, where they're
Hmm.
going out there and really making some changes in a very positive way, and some people are doing it in a negative way. So,
Right. Right.
but at the same time, I think that the gap between people that are not technically trained and those that are is just ever increasing, right? And it almost to them it seems like magic.
Yeah.
How did they know that?
Right.
It's
Right.
like I got this ad. I was just thinking about it. It's like, dude, your phone is listening.
Right.
It understands more about you than you do. If you're, buying chocolate, maybe it's something hormonal that's
Hmm.
happening to you.
Yeah.
Who knows? And sends you those ads. But either way, I want to. I mean, this has been so informative. Any last sort of like thoughts or ideas that you're seeing in terms of where you're at with just your understanding of data, and maybe last words to impart to anybody that's listening, and in terms of like informing yourself, protecting yourself, but then also maybe some positive measures.
Hmm. Absolutely. A couple of things, right? I mean, I'm personally, uh, I've got, I mentioned Helios, right? And we're betting big
Mhm.
on business continuity and disaster recovery
Mhm.
being the next big boom. I mean, this has been around for years, but it's more or less been as an afterthought, for a lot of companies, right? And they all, everybody feels they have good processes in place, right? But you won't know until you actually go through a scenario,
Mhm.
right? And what we're doing is helping them accelerate that process in terms of identifying all of their gaps and their security holes and things like that. And we are using AI, and we're and I'm betting big on it,
Mhm.
right? And I've literally betting my stake in my company, my career, and everything, right, on
Mhm.
this. But and that's been kind of a great journey for us, right? And we get to talk to some amazing customers, right? And they all have the same kind of pain points. So that's kind of where the direction is going,
Mhm.
right? In our industry. Also, for everyone, for the things that we talked about today, in terms of securing yourself, making sure you've got your passwords in place, making sure that you've got good, cyber hygiene
Mhm.
overall,
Mhm.
right? And that involves doing some uncomfortable work,
Mhm.
which requires you to go through and see what you have in your like notes folders, and seeing if you got passwords in there. Remove them,
Right.
get the right tools in place, and then start identifying where some of your holes are on your laptops, on your emails, and things like that, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes people put it in there too.
Yeah,
you
and
know
forget. I
yeah.
mean, to be honest, how
Yeah.
many passwords has anybody forgotten over
Yeah.
time and then reused
Absolutely.
them, and then,
Absolutely.
that's such an ordeal. But yeah, no, thank you so much for this explanation, all of it. I mean, I think that there are so many interesting insights, a lot of very valuable information coming from, you know, you're at the crux of it. So we really appreciate it. Where can someone reach you, or a business reach you, if they're interested in using your services?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they can find me there.
Okay.
Hmm.
Amazing. And your company Helios, what's the,
Helios,
yeah.
yep. Helios1.ai,
Okay.
as well as Trillicent,
Okay.
TRILLISENT.com.
All right.
Yep.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Well, Kumar, very, very nice to have you.
Yep.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.